And now we take another step into the fixed income market. But this time we're looking at, yesterday we saw the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics releasing the much-awaited June inflation report. Inflation is one of the key indicators that all the markets around the world take a cue from, because that's one of the factors that is being used to gauge the country's performance and take monetary policy decisions by central banks across the world. So Nigeria's economy is no exception, and that's, of course, is one of the expectations that we had for the market yesterday, which came in at about 2.222%. That's against that's the inflation number for the month of June, while that was about 0.75% drop when compared to the amount, the 22.97% inflation reading for the month of May. And now to give us details about what to expect from the market, particularly in reaction to yesterday's inflation numbers, let's bring in Bankole Odusanya, chief dealer with Polaris Bank, to tell us more about this inflation reading, and then what, of course, to expect next week when the MPC will be holding. It's nice to have you in the show,
Thank you,
Mr. Bankole Odusanya.
Yeah,
so now, you saw that reading, 22.22%, and of course, it's the third consecutive monthly decline since that rebase inflation reading by the National Bureau of Statistics. So now, what do you make of it, and will this make the central bank MPC to cut interest rate from the 27.5%, which it currently is, and is high?
Yeah, thank you for having us. Inflation has dropped to 22.22%, being driven by food and core inflation. Of course, that's because we saw moderation 4 months earlier on petrol prices, but there was an uptick in June, so there's likely risk that going into half year we may see some level of uptick in petrol prices that then affects inflation. But basically, going into the rest of the year, interest rates are trending downwards, even without MPC's adjustment. And this is because at some point the Debt Management Office started trying to manage cost of debt issuance. Of course, revenue, expected and budgeted revenue isn't coming in as fast as projected. So we expect that at some point, even going into September, it's expected that there could be supplementary budget, and that simply just changes the game. But what we are expecting, the reading of market is that Debt Management Office issued fewer instruments in the last 1 month, June to July, to bring down rates from 19% of bonds. And we have NTBs, Nigerian Treasury bills, also at 16.3% for 1 year. They were at 19%, all of them as at March. So right now, dropping rates simply manages cost of debt issue. And then going into the rest of the year, they will borrow more, but at cheaper rate. So that's what is happening. With MPC, it's just a matter of time. If it does not happen, if that rate cut does not happen on July 22nd, it could happen in September. Personally, I feel the MPC would like to see where debt issuance and borrowing would go to. Because if there's going to be more borrowing and spending, it means that the risk of inflation remains inherent, and you do not want to jump the gun by cutting. But if there's to be a cut in July, probably to react to 3 months consecutive drop in inflation, probably there'll be a marginal cut from 17.50 to maybe 17. So that's just our own expectation.
Okay, so now let's move away from the inflation. I think this just has to be our last question because we're out of time. Now, at the same time, next week, I'm sure we're going to be expecting that FGN bond auction for the month of July. So what would be your expectation under the government's borrowing plans for the third quarter?
Okay, like I explained, the offer instruments are few. And that brings in the weight of demand, not just from PFAs, banks, individuals, and corporates who have funds to invest. With the direction of rates, a lot of people who had monies on deposits are rushing back to quickly grab high-yielding instruments. So at the last auction, we saw 17.8 on the longer end of the bond. That's 2032. We expect that bond to close at, say, 100 basis point lower, 16% levels. That's already trading in the secondary market at 16% level. So when the next auction drops to 16, what it simply means is that government raises more cash at cheaper rate.
Okay, so that means that in line with the borrowing, government is not overshooting its targets.
Not yet. What they have done is to taper issuance, manage the cost of issue. We think that by the last quarter, they will come to mop up a lot more, but at a cheaper rate. That's the target. That's what we feel is happening.
Okay, Mr. Wankele, I think we'll keep our eyes out on how government turns out, how that auction will turn out, as well as keep an eye on the expectations from the Monetary Policy Committee of the MPC when they meet next week on Monday and Tuesday. Thank you so much for your time on the show.
Thank you.